Good morning. My name's Eric, and welcome to Southern Tier Gardening. We've had a lot of rain here recently. It hasn't been raining today, so I thought I'd get out here and do some work in the garden. And it's been a little while since I've done a video, so I thought I'd shoot a video today and just show you guys what's going on in the gardens. My plan for today is to do a full backyard garden tour. I'll show you guys what I've been harvesting and making recently. And lastly, I'm going to talk about a couple subjects over in the main garden. I'm going to talk about the importance of what I call shallow cultivation. And I'm going to talk to you guys also a little bit about how I decide to space out my garden, how I decide where things go and how I space out the garden. So anyway, let's get started. We can start over here in my container garden. I always grow a combination of vegetables, herbs, and flowers in this area. Right here I have a pot with some golden daisies, a sun patient, and some verena. I always like to have flowers in the backyard. They look pretty, and more importantly, they attract bees and pollinators to your garden space. Over here, I've done something different this year. I'm growing all of my really hot chili peppers in containers. And this year, I'm growing two varieties. This plant, or this pot here on the left, is my jalapeno. And I have 3 plants planted in there. And you can see that they're doing really good. Both of these pepper plants have lots of flowers on them. But if we come right around here, you can see I'm starting to get quite a few jalapenos forming on this plant. I'm growing my chili peppers in containers only this year for a couple reasons. One is, as you can see the height of these plants already, they grow really well in containers. But more importantly, one of these plants, now this one on the left here, this is a cayenne pepper. I started with 3 plants in here, but one of my plants did die. But I have 2 real healthy ones now. And you're going to get off of one pepper plant easily, 40, 50 chili peppers. So I used to grow these real hot peppers, my habaneros, my serranos. I used to grow them in the garden, but I would just have way too many. I'd plant 6 plants, and this works out perfect for me. 2 or 3 chili pepper plants are all that I really need to get through the year and eat them all. And I just noticed over here on my cayenne, I'm seeing some cayenne peppers here. There's one right there. You can see the flowers. These plants just do really well in these containers. So 2 cayenne peppers and 3 jalapenos are my chili peppers this year. And you guys have seen this before. This is my container of green onions or scallions. I always have this growing. I love these kinds of onions. You can just pick them out as you need them and cook with them. They're delicious. They do really well in a container. Back there, I had some pansies growing throughout the winter, but they're almost ready to die. They don't like the real warm temperature, so I'm going to get rid of them pretty soon. And in that pot, I'm planning on planting some basil. So now we can start to come over, take a walk over to this side of the yard. I wanted to show you guys real quick a couple plants I have hanging from this. I have a live oak tree in my yard, so this area gets a lot of shade. And I'm growing, this is a Boston fern, and then this plant here is called begonia. And my mom told me that my grandmother loved begonias and used to grow them. So this plant does really well in the shade, and I grow that mainly just to kind of remember my gram. She loved gardening and growing flowers mainly, but she was an amazing gardener. So over here, this is one of my garden plots. This is the garden plot throughout the winter where I grew red onions, and in the early spring, late winter, I grew potatoes over here. So all the onions and potatoes were harvested. If you look over here, you guys will recognize these. Those are some yellow squash plants. What happened this year is in that part of the garden, I had a lot of my potato plants die. So when I removed those potato plants, I had some empty garden space available. So I planted 7 yellow squash plants. And I'm really glad I did. I knew I wouldn't be using this garden space for anything else till the middle of summer, so I would have time to grow these. And usually I grow yellow squash in my garden space where I grow my tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers. But I was really happy I decided to do this year because it keeps these plants out of that side of the yard or the other garden, so I have more garden space over there. And it allowed me to kind of space these out. These plants get pretty darn big, and you want to give them a lot of room to grow. You can see this one right here. That's a huge plant. So this has really worked out good. I love yellow squash. I'm actually going to grab my pruners. I think I have a couple in here that are ready to harvest. Once these things start growing and you're harvesting them, they're hard to keep up with. It's like zucchini. You can really get overwhelmed. But let's go right down here. I think I see one in this plant that's ready to harvest. I do like when I'm harvesting yellow squash to use pruners to make the cut. Yep, there's one there. And I know I've got one in this plant. Look at him right there. So I'm going to sneak in, give him a cut. And there's another one. There's a couple squash. Is there one in here? Well, he's little, but I like to harvest them when they're small. It'll just promote the plant to keep growing more. So that's pretty cool. So there's three yellow squash. But all these plants I've been harvesting from, and they're all doing pretty good. So I have to decide what I'm going to do next with this garden space. Come on, Mabes. You get away from there. You get away from them yellow squash. Okay, so I'm going to take these. So now I'm going to show you guys what I've been harvesting. I told you guys about 2 or 3 weeks ago I harvested all of my potatoes and my red onions. I grew 3 different varieties of potatoes this year. These are some of my last just regular white potatoes that I have. I also grew red potatoes, and I grew some Yukon Golds. Then these onions, these are some just beautiful red onions that are fully cured now. They're dried out nice. So these onions will store now for, a couple months. I store things in my garage. It's dark and cool in there, so that's where I store this stuff. And then right here, I wanted to show you guys what I made with some of my red onions. I did some pickled red onions. I love these darn things. I like them on burgers, anything as far as Southwest food recipes, Mexican food, tacos, burritos, nachos. These things are just awesome. So I did 6 pints of regular, just onions. And then I did a couple jars spicy. You can see in there's a red cayenne pepper. This is a jar of spicy, a couple cayenne peppers. And what I used were my own cayennes from last season. This jar contains the last cayenne peppers that I harvested. They were still green, but I put them in my dehydrator whole and dried them out. And these are just like dried chili peppers, and you use them in different recipes just like that. So another way I use, up my harvest. But pretty cool. I love these darn things. I also brought my jar of cayenne pepper powder out because I want to talk about something a little bit later down in the road in the video here. But anyway, that's what I've been harvesting. I gotta decide what I'm going to do with this garden space once these yellow squash are done. I probably will do a cover crop of this entire garden space of cowpeas, something like black eyed peas or purple hull peas. Okay, so now we can come over to this side of the garden. This garden space is where I'm growing the classic, summer vegetables. I have peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, eggplant, and okra. So I'm just going to do a quick tour here, and I'm going to talk about some gardening tips and some things that I'm doing in this garden space right now. So these plants have been in the ground as transplants for about a month now. This first row, these are poblano peppers. Now, I was talking to you guys about how I decide where these plants go. And one of the main factors is you got to know your sun direction in your yard. So the sun is predominantly behind me. So that back space of the garden, you want to have the tallest plants. And then as you move forward, the lower plants, because you don't want to have stuff that's going to grow really tall but ultimately shade or cast shade on shorter plants. So this back first row, poblano peppers get really tall. That's why I have a T-post even in the ground to get ready to stake these or to trellis them up, to hold them up. I'll be using string to hold these plants up. But poblano peppers, they're the pepper that you make a chili relleno with. They're a little spicier than a bell pepper, but they're not quite as spicy as a jalapeno. I love them, but they always do real well for me. So I've got 6 of them planted here first. This next row was 6 plants of a pepper called Cubanelle. A Cubanelle pepper kind of has the color of a banana pepper, but they're a little bit bigger. They're a sweet pepper. Some people call them an Italian frying pepper, but they're real good. But if you look right here, I had 2 transplants die on me. So instead of just leaving that space open, I just planted an extra eggplant that I had. That variety is called Ichiban. But I have 4 Cubanelle pepper plants that are now doing real good, looking real healthy. Right now I just have them held up with some small wooden bamboo stakes, but I do have my larger wooden stakes driven in the ground, and I'm ready to hold these pepper plants up with a Florida weave string trellising system. And I'll be using that Florida weave on a lot of stuff in this garden. So now we can keep going down these rows. This third row, this is a pepper called pimento. And pimento is a small round pepper, looks like a cherry pepper. They get a little bit bigger than that, but they're used a lot of different ways. You think about a pimento, that's what's the variety of pepper that's stuffed inside an olive. Pimento peppers are used to make pimento cheese, which is really good and popular down here in the South. Another cool thing that they do with pimentos is, it's why I showed you guys that chili powder, my cayenne pepper powder earlier in the video, because these pimento peppers, when they're red and ripe, you can dehydrate them, and that's the pepper that they make paprika with. When you get paprika, that's been ground down from a dehydrated pimento pepper most of the time. But especially if you're buying Spanish or paprika from Spain, they're going to be using a pimento pepper. So I'm super excited to grow these. That's a little bit of the, the gardening nerd in me coming out, because I can't wait to harvest some of these pimento peppers, dry them out, and make my own paprika. And now I'm going to get even get crazier, because you can, if you've ever been in the store, you can buy smoked paprika. So I'm even going to take some of them dried, dehydrated pimento peppers. Then I'm going to put them in my smoker for maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. Just touch them with a little bit of probably, I haven't thought about it, probably pecan wood smoke. And make smoked paprika, grind it into a powder. So that's my plan for these pimento peppers. They're also just delicious, just thrown on the grill or stuffed or eaten raw in salads. Just a delicious pepper. And these plants are doing real well. I have 6 of them. You can see where I'm walking. Another space factor in gardens is you always want to leave room in your garden for you to walk. You want to have compacted soil in your paths, but you want to have loose, fluffy soil in your rows. So you can see I've always got space in my garden, and then I plant on double rows. So in the middle there, I won't walk, and these plants are a little bit closer together, but it's the way I utilize my garden space. And I like to give my plants lots of space. You can see this garden looks pretty, it looks kind of empty, like you could have, Eric, why didn't you plant more stuff in there? I'm telling you, you want to give your plants, especially these peppers and eggplants and tomatoes, you want to give them space to grow, and that you don't want them competing for water and light. So we can continue down the garden space to right here. Now these are 2 full rows of green bell peppers. I haven't grown bell peppers in a couple years, so I wanted to get back into it. And these plants are just doing great. I have 12 total plants. Now, one reason in the past I've decided not to grow green bell peppers is at the end of the day, it's challenging to get a lot of peppers off of each plant. I mean, you can watch a green bell pepper plant grow for 2-3 months, and you might end up getting 4 or 5 peppers off of it. So what I do is I plant a lot of them. So first of all, I'm planting 12 plants. And then I'm going to show you guys some tips throughout the growing season that I do that I believe leads to harvesting more peppers off of each plant. When I do bell peppers, I try to set my goal to get about 10 peppers off a plant. So if I get 8 to 10 peppers here per plant, that'll be plenty of peppers for me for the growing season. So like I talked about, all my sweet peppers this year are in my in-ground garden. There's nothing hot pepper here, no chili peppers. All these peppers are mild, delicious. And then back in the container garden, I have my chili peppers. So that's a little bit something I'm doing differently this year. So now, last year I grew 3 eggplants, and they just did unbelievable. They love the heat here. I have learned that this is just a plant that grows well in my area. I will admit it's not my all-time favorite vegetable, but because it grows so well here, and I do enjoy eating it well enough that I've kind of expanded the number of eggplants I'm growing this year. This first double row, these plants right here, I have 8 plants. These eggplants I'm supporting with tomato cages, but this variety is what they call Japanese style eggplant, or Ichiban. This is the first time I've been growing these. You can see I'm starting to get some flowers forming on these eggplants. The eggplant, in my opinion, has one of the most beautiful flowers. It's a deep purple flower, and then the eggplants start forming. So I have 8 of these Ichiban eggplants planted on a double row, and then this next row is a single row. I have 5 of just the standard, they call it a Black Beauty variety. It's the style of eggplant that you see mostly in the grocery stores. So I have them on, they don't go quite as tall and big as the Ichiban variety, so I have them on a smaller tomato cage. But that's how I'm supporting these plants. Keep going. This next row are some tomatoes. This row right here, these are determinate tomatoes. You can see I've already got one line of string weaving in between the T-posts supporting these plants. This variety is called Roma. These are Roma tomatoes. I'm going to use these tomatoes probably in canning. You know, I'll eat them fresh in salads, but my plan for these tomatoes will be to make salsa and sauce and canning style tomato. So I've got 5 of those plants right there. Then I have my cucumbers growing on my cattle panel trellis. Last year was the first year I started growing my cucumbers vertically, and it really worked out great. The variety that I grew this year is different. I'm growing a regular slicing size cucumber, and it's called burpless. But you guys can see these plants are starting to grow up the trellis real nice. I'm getting lots of flowers and small cucumbers starting to form. So all this is good news for me. I love just watching how the cucumbers grow, and the plants are just beautiful. So pretty excited about how this trellis is going. Now, if you guys look on the end here, this is a cherry tomato plant. There's one right there in the middle, and there's another cherry tomato plant on this end of the trellis. Now, my plan is these cherry tomato plants will grow and grow and grow very tall. So my plan is when these cucumber plants die and I remove them, by that time, these tomato plants that are on the end will have outgrown the cage, and I'm gonna try to start to carry them over here and trellis them onto the cattle panel. And then the same with this one, grow it up the side, start to grow it down the top, and I'm thinking my plan, and then I'm gonna have one growing up here in the middle, another tomato plant. My plan is to have sort of an archway of cherry tomato plants on this trellis, or this cattle panel trellis. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's why I planted one on this end, one on that end, and one in the middle, to try to utilize this trellis once the cucumbers are gone. So now we can start to go to the back side of the garden here and show you guys one last thing I have planted. Once again, I'm going down my walking paths. But back here, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are tomato plants, indeterminate. These plants will get real tall. I'll have to stake them up even taller than these cages. But the variety of tomato is called Cherokee Purple. It's an heirloom tomato. It's one of my favorites. They have a dark purple color, red purple, and they are just absolutely delicious. One of the sweetest tomatoes you could imagine. So that shows you guys what I have planted over here. Pretty good variety this year of sweet peppers. I'm really hoping these eggplants do well again for me. Make some eggplant parmesan. And I like eggplant just right on the grill with some olive oil and salt and pepper grilled. So, lastly, what I have to show you in this garden is on this back side, you can see I have sort of an empty space here, but it's not empty. This is the latest development in this part of the garden. You can see, if you look close here, there's just the signs of some plants coming up. And I have a double row planted. There's one on that side. You can see I've got 2 rows of plants in this space. And what these little plants are, these are little baby okra plants. I have 2 full rows of okra planted. my garden is about 25, 30 feet long. So, you know, about two rows of 20 feet of okra. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that talks about what I was saying earlier with the sun. This back space of the garden, these okra plants will get real tall. So, you know, they're not going to shade any of the plants because the sun is coming from that other direction. So think about that when you're deciding where to put plants in your garden. You want to have tall stuff to the back and short stuff to the front. So, okay guys, well, that about wraps it up for today. Oh, one last subject. I guess I would say it's a gardening tip that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And if you look at the soil, I can kind of show you what I've done here. This is the work that I'm doing here today. I'm working on these stakes. I've been putting in the cages. But I wanted to talk to you about what's called shallow cultivation. And all it is it's, if you look right here, you can see this soil is compacted where I walk. But see how this soil is sort of like fluffed up? Well, whenever you get the opportunity, especially after you've had some real heavy rain, because after you've had some heavy rain, your soil can get sort of compacted. So shallow cultivation is all about aerating your soil. So I come in here either with a garden hoe or my pickaxe, and I loosen all the soil up around these plants. And that allows oxygen to get into that soil. Aeration, it's called. You hear about people that aerate their lawns. It's the same idea. You're loosening that soil so the roots have less resistance when they're reaching out to get water and nutrients, and then it allows oxygen to get into that soil to promote strong, healthy root systems. It also weeds your garden. So when you go through here and you turn this soil up, you're also weeding your garden. And you just want to be careful. You don't want to damage the roots of these plants. So I don't go right up to the stem. You just want to cultivate out here around the plants. And if you look this side, I've done all my rows. And after this video, I'll continue to do shallow cultivation around these pepper plants here on the end. So anyway, I'm going to get going today. That's all I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I'm glad it's been a while since I've done a video. This was a lot of fun today. I'm really pleased with how this garden is looking right now, and hopefully I have some successful harvests. But I certainly have fun doing it. It's my passion. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll probably see you in a couple weeks and hopefully be harvesting some cherry tomatoes by then. All right, thanks for joining me today on Southern Tier Gardening.